Yo, this is crazy to me. Check this out. So I'm here in San Francisco, which is a beautiful historical city, but things are kind of expensive here. For example, just to get a decent hotel room will cost you upwards of $400 or more. Why is San Francisco so expensive? Well, today's episode is about to be a bit of a doozy because, yes, the average price of a San Francisco hotel room is the most expensive in the world according to Bloomberg.com. But the truth is, this question goes a lot deeper than just the price of a hotel room. Now, the short answer to that question is that San Francisco is very undersupplied. But, of course, that's not the answer that you expect from this episode. So buckle up and prepare as we go just a little deeper into the crazy world of economics. Wait, hold on a second. Full warning, economics is one of those need more than 10 minutes to explain really deep type of topics. So I'm going to be explaining all of this really simply. So sound the layman's alarm. So, to understand why San Francisco is so expensive, we must first understand supply and demand. Now, supply and demand is actually a part of microeconomics, or the study of things that people and businesses do related to the use of the limited resources available. And microeconomic supply and demand works like this. The supply slope shows how many of your products will be sold with the best outcome, while the demand slope shows how many people will want to buy your product. The price of your product will change until it ends up at a point where the amount demanded will equal the amount supplied, in which that outcome is called an economic equilibrium, or where the supply and demand are balanced. Hey, real quick, I just really want to make sure that you remember this word because it's going to be used a lot in today's episode. Okay, I'm out. You will sell as many products as are demanded. Now, I can dig way deeper into economics, but I think that's enough info for you to understand the rest of this episode. And I'm sure that you'd rather live a life than sit here and listen to me struggle trying to explain economics for 30 minutes. So that is, in layman's terms, economics.
Okay, you for sure answered something, but you didn't answer my question. Why is all that important? Again, why is San Francisco so expensive?
Right. Why is San Francisco so expensive? I got a little sidetracked and I apologize. But to put this into an example, let's create a hypothetical. You're selling world famous baked Ceph cookies at your dessert shop. You supply 20 baked Ceph cookies a day at $4.99 because on average only 20 people a day demand your baked Ceph cookies. So it works out. Now let's say that a milk shop moves in next door to your dessert shop and that increases the demand for your cookies. Now on average you have 100 people a day that demand your Ceph cookies. But unfortunately, you can only make a max of 20 baked cookies a day due to not having enough oven space. This will create what's called an economic disequilibrium, or where supply and demand are not balanced. Hey, and this one too, make sure that you remember this word as well, because both equilibrium and disequilibrium are opposite definitions, but will be used a lot in today's episode. Okay, quick, fast, painless, I'm out. And how do you fix this disequilibrium? You have to match the supply. But again, you only have the space to make 20 baked Ceph cookies a day. However, you can replace your oven with 2 refrigerators, allowing you to be able to sell a fully refrigerated Ceph cookie recipe instead, which will give you the ability to make 100 cookies or more a day. Or, if you don't want to change from baked to refrigerated cookies, because you really love the baked Ceph cookies for some reason or something, you could also drop the demand by doing this. That's a lot like what's going on in San Francisco right now, but we'll come back to this later. Let's add a cookie badge on screen to remind us to come back to this. Okay, you're still with me, right? Now that we got Economics 101 out the way, let's take a brief look at the San Francisco timeline. In 1776, Spanish explorers came across land that they later took from the native Indians living there. They named it San Francisco, or St. Francis, then later signed it to the US in 1848. By 1848, the California Gold Rush started, and the population of San Francisco went from 800 to 35,000 when lots of people moved from the East Coast to California in 1849. Thus, the San Francisco 49ers. NFL fans, you're welcome. From there, by 1863, San Francisco was a hotspot for the LGBT community, drawing in many LGBT folks from all over the nation. In 1987, Full House first aired on TV, and from the 1990s to today, there's been lots of growth, from amusements to internet and tech startups. And this is only mention of a few historical highlights of San Francisco, but probably the most important info is that San Francisco is a peninsula, or a piece of land almost fully surrounded by water. Now, why is this important? Well, considering the history of San Francisco and the fact that they're surrounded by water, most of the housing supply has been taken up well before the disequilibrium. And now that they're in a disequilibrium, it's making those who want to live in San Francisco have to compete in bids for a limited supply of housing, which in most cases, those with the most money ends up winning the housing bids. Back to our cookie badge reminder, just as you had a bake limit of 20 cookies a day and either had to find another way to supply cookies or raise the cookie prices, San Francisco is a lot the same. San Francisco can only supply a limited number of housing and also has the option to find another way to fix the supply issue. But it seems like San Francisco's more on the side of letting the prices rise, which in most cases is fully fair, but with economics, it's different. June 27, 2016, a San Francisco resident by the name of Neil Hutchinson received some crazy news.
Neil has been paying $1,800 a month rent, but his landlady recently informed him she was raising the rent to $8,000 a month.
Complete shock and devastation. I had no idea it could be that much. Koi Tower, right up there.
The apartment is 3 bedrooms with bay views in an area where 3-bedroom apartments rent for an average of $6,800 a month. But the building is more than 100 years old and a bit run down. Neil, a union video engineer, says he can't afford $8,000 a month, so he could be evicted in a matter of weeks before the rent board can even hear his case.
And please keep in mind that Neil Hutchinson is only an example of many people that live in San Francisco. This same exact story is happening to residents of all types all over San Francisco, all thanks to this disequilibrium. But we'll come back to that later. Let's add a money badge to the screen. Adding supply, aka building more housing, would be able to reverse San Francisco's disequilibrium. But guess what? As far as I know, we can't build present-day cities over water, which brings us full circle back to supply and demand. The demand in San Francisco has not only passed the supply of housing, but it's also passed the current limit of what the land of San Francisco can even supply, which is the heart of the issue here. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. San Francisco is expensive because the city has pretty much met its population limits and supply can no longer meet with demand the way that it's currently set up. I can understand that now, but how did the San Francisco demand get so high? Well, again, supply and demand are related, so we'll need to take a look at both of them to be able to answer this question. Now, if we take a look at the timeline one more time, we'll see that there are a few events that show us how San Francisco uses up its supply until current day, such as in 1776, Spanish explorers claimed an already hilly and plant-filled region. In 1887, San Francisco set 1,000 acres to protect natural land. In 1960, San Francisco put in place very strict zoning rules for new buildings, which hold strong even till today, due to San Francisco not wanting to lose its iconic sites. That attracts part of its multi-billion-dollar tourism earnings each year, and with that, buildings can't be tall enough to cast a shadow on city parks or public squares unless it's the first hour after sunrise or 1 hour before sunset, which usually isn't more than 40 feet for most parts of the city. In 1982, San Francisco built more commercial, industrial, and office zoning, leaving little room for future housing, all which limit the housing supply before the disequilibrium even happens. Lastly, and probably the most importantly, older residents don't want to give up their property to real estate dealers due to protecting traditions. But more on this later. Let's add a house badge to remind us to come back to this. Now, on the demand side of things, taking yet another look at the timeline, we'll see that San Francisco has always been a city full of rich history, giving lots and many different types of people reasons to visit San Francisco at one point or another, such as, in the 1930s, the Golden Gate Bridge and Bay Bridges were built, in 1934, Alcatraz was built, in 1987, Full House first aired on TV, not to mention they've built many parks, museums, tours, buildings that are now historic, and most importantly, they have a long list of notable companies that are in San Francisco, such as Reddit, Twitter, Twitch, Sega, Unity 3D, Patreon, Gap, Wells Fargo, Craigslist, Dropbox, Lyft, Uber, IGN, Ustream, Airbnb, LucasArts, and Lucasfilms.
Mind fried.
Very interesting. So a mix of the limited supply with the crazy business success, the culture, and etc. that's all happening here makes for the city to be in high demand. Very nice, but I must ask, how come San Francisco residents don't live in cities to the east or to the south? Well, lots do actually. But the real question is that how we fix this problem? Because I mean, sure, it may seem fitting to tell some San Franciscans to stop complaining and move to other cities around the peninsula, but unfortunately, it's not that easy. These neighboring cities already have set communities of their own, with things like rent and more that they're already used to. Raising the demand of housing in these places could jack up the rent prices and drive out those who live there, causing for what's called gentrification, or raising property values that remove lower income families and businesses. But I'm sure it's not easy to really feel the issue just by listening to me summarize my research. So let's talk to a few locals.
Yeah, I think San Francisco is very expensive. It's definitely one of the more expensive cities in the country.
Like, there's no place to live here without paying less than like $2,000, right? If you want to live by yourself, you have to be rich.
San Francisco's so expensive because all the big tech companies that are coming out here. And also we have the most beautiful weather out here. I think the most peaceful people out here. That's why I commute over an hour and 20 minutes every day just to come to San Francisco.
Oakland is getting way expensive than it was. That's where I live, so I can tell you about Oakland. I don't know like any other places. You look for an apartment over there and it's not that cheap anymore. There are like more and more tech jobs that aren't being like fulfilled. So, you know, there's a spot, people come over, they look in the city, it's super expensive, they look somewhere else, the closest might be Oakland. There's a demand, so landlords will rise the price and there'll be money, and yeah.
I think people could build a lot of housing here. They could build a lot of housing around here, but everybody's like, it's a great idea, just not in front of my house. Because if that would happen, it would lower the rent prices, and there's a lot of people who don't want to lower rent prices, don't want to lower house prices. So I think there's two sides of the coin. However, if you don't meet the demand of the housing, there's going to be a downside to that, where it's only people who work in that tech industry can afford it. Whereas like people who work service jobs like at Starbucks or anything else in like clothing stores won't be able to particularly live here.
I think that all these big companies that are raising the prices in the Bay Area are going to realize that other parts of the country are going to be cheaper for their companies to live. So they're going to end up migrating elsewhere, and then everything's going to stabilize out a little bit, hopefully.
Build more housing. That would probably like solve some of the issues if we didn't have so many high-rise lofts going up instead, and we had more housing that was actually made affordable.
Build more housing. I also think maybe it's gonna burst, so maybe the whole startup scene is gonna start to slow down and people might start losing jobs and whatnot. And in that case, with losing jobs, I think the rent prices are gonna start falling as well. It's gonna be less demand on the market. That's hard to say. It's still going pretty strong, so it's a big issue, and you would have to know economics. You would need to know a lot of things before I could even say anything.
So you see, it sadly just isn't as easy as, hey man, just live outside the city. As said by Alan, he lives outside of San Francisco, and thanks to San Francisco's disequilibrium, he's watching his rent prices raise. Is it fair that Alan has to pay extra or has to move somewhere else completely thanks to San Francisco's disequilibrium? I mean, sure, life's not fair, but at what point does it end here? As Lyman has pointed out, where will people who work at Starbucks and clothing stores live? And what about service jobs like police and firefighters? Teachers already can't afford to live in the city, and the district is having a hard time finding teachers to teach. Will Lot soon have to join Joshua in his 3 hours and 120-mile round-trip commute to work every day? Or will the city do as Kyle suggests and start putting up affordable apartments? History is unfolding as we speak, and truly, only time will tell how this story ends.
Wow, what a crazy roller coaster of events happening here. Who would have known that this issue would have been so deep? What are some of the solutions that San Francisco is looking at to fix these issues?
Well, believe it or not, the solution is pretty simple. San Francisco needs to build more housing. And seeing as San Francisco can't expand north, south, east, or west, their only real option is to expand vertically. Yep, San Francisco needs to turn themselves into a metropolis like New York City. And this is another root to the problem. What's stopping San Francisco from becoming a metropolis, you're asking? Well, back to our house badge reminder, because of traditions. In order for these affordable high-rise apartments to go up, the real estate dealers need a place to put them. San Francisco homeowners have gotten many crazy offers over the years, but most won't budge, mostly because most homeowners feel the duty to keep San Francisco from changes, like replacing old historic buildings with new ones and giving power to new residents that don't pitch in to the San Francisco culture, which I can only imagine what that's like. But back to our money badge reminder, having a lot of high-rises would sure help our friend Neil Hutchinson. Not only would Neil have other places that are affordable to go to, his landlord probably wouldn't even have raised his rent to $8,000 a month to begin with. So with all that, you have two sides of the issue. Those who want more places to live at whatever cost, and then those who want to preserve many aspects of San Francisco that made it what it is today. So back to our cookie badge reminder one last time. Just as you didn't want to switch from baked Seth cookies to refrigerated Seth cookies for whatever reason, some San Francisco homeowners don't want to switch from historical housing to high-rises for their own reasons. But adding to that war, as mentioned earlier, San Francisco also has crazy zoning rules, limiting building height, building capacity, the amount of buildings allowed to be built at the same time, and much more, further adding to this disequilibrium. Yeah, it's all a very confusing mess, but the real question with all this mess is, what's more important in San Francisco? Keeping city culture, possibly destroying city structure? Jacking up rent prices so high that video engineers like Neil Hutchinson, or teachers, police, firefighters, grocery clerks, and etc. can't even afford to live in the city? Or keeping city structure, possibly destroying city culture? Bulldozing and replacing many of the old, historic, and unique buildings that make San Francisco so gorgeous and recognizable today, which, quite frankly, regardless if you live in the city or not, I think is a very tough question to ask yourself. Wow, very fascinating stuff. You know, I without a doubt learned a lot today, but there were so many things that I wasn't able to add in today's episode due to needing way too much info to set it all up. And sure, maybe this whole San Francisco mess isn't affecting you today, but who knows? Maybe it'll affect you tomorrow. Ultimately, San Francisco and the whole Bay Area is at war with change right now that is unseen throughout history. But at some point, there will be an outcome. And I believe that there's something to learn from this mess. Because those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Man, what a crazy episode today. Tech companies, please stay as far away as possible from my sweet, sweet San Diego. But today, I have one simple question for you. What would you choose to fix the San Francisco mess? Would you keep city structure, risking city culture, or keep city culture, risking city structure? Cast your vote by clicking that question on screen. It should be in the top right corner. And if you're on mobile, feel free to weigh in the chat section. I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say about this topic, and I hope that you all found something curious about San Francisco's economy. But whatever the case may be, remember to always feed your curiosity.
Tree must really be important to you if all you risked your lives for it. It is pretty big, isn't it? Hey, it even has a neat old tree house in it. Oh, maybe you're right, Alfred. This tree deserves to live. I won't knock it down.
Yeah!